Welcome and bienvenidos. My name is Justine Gonzalez, and I am here to welcome you to this episode of the Cultural Capacity Podcast. This is episode 23. 23. Thank you for following and subscribing. Thank you for sharing when you find value in the episodes. And as a reminder, as soon as you hear the intro music end, we do have a short ad from our sponsor for this episode. I'm so glad that you're here and committed to your own personal learning journey as well as your professional development endeavors. This podcast can be used for both. Let's get compassionately curious together. Welcome and bienvenidos to Cultural Capacity, a podcast sponsored by Educator Aid Incorporated, where our team is committed to supporting individuals and organizations on their journey of self-aware leadership, emotional wellness, and development of effective cross-cultural communications. Let's get ready to explore the following topics together by biting into them with little pieces that go really deep to examine ourselves. Topics like bias, culture, cultural psychology, cultural neuroscience, diversity, equity, inclusion, and racial equity. Our episodes are all intended to serve as introspective tools for you as the individual leader or the teams that you're leading. Be sure to check out the links in the podcast description. Let's get ready to learn together. Welcome. I'm going to dive right in with this question. It's a loaded episode, and believe it or not, I think it's going to be even less than 15 minutes, even though I tend to be long-winded. I'm working on it, listeners. I'm working on it. Because the format of this episode is intended to be able to be on the go, small, bite-sized, very focused question, one question per episode that you can go really deep with. And my hope is that it ignites you to really introspect and examine your own life in a little bit deeper way from just a quick listen of a podcast episode. So let's dive into this episode's question. Is it really my responsibility to become more self-aware? Woo, a loaded question. Is it really my responsibility? And so if you've tuned into this podcast before, thank you first. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Secondly, I would encourage you and remind you that we often do pull excerpts or quotes, which we cite from a multitude of authors, a multitude of belief systems. Today's text happens to be through the lens of a deep dive into the character of Jesus, the character of the Christ, and the personhood that was Jesus, and what we could possibly glean from this leader, this leader who is known across so many different religious traditions. So I wanted to share that up front because, again, if you go back and listen throughout our episodes, you will find that we try to cite a multitude of different resources as well as authors and look at the world through these different lenses. That is part of our goal here at Cultural Capacity, is exposing our listeners to perhaps different ways of thinking or being than what they've been exposed to simply by asking questions. And these can be questions that come up in conversations with others or that you could utilize in conversation, or first and foremost, to really ask yourself these questions. And so when I thought about, the title of this episode and this whole concept, like who is responsible for becoming more self-aware, or is it really my responsibility to become more self-aware? And the short answer is yes. So the text I'm going to reference right now and read a direct quote from is called Jesus and the Disinherited. It's by Dr. Howard Thurman. The original publication was actually released all the way back in 1949, and there's been numerous releases of newer updated versions, but the heart and content of the text is still there. And so I'm reading this quick excerpt from page 11. And it's talking specifically about the message of Jesus. And it says this: his message focused on the urgency of a radical change in the inner attitude of the people. He recognized fully that out of the heart are the issues of life, and that no external force, however great and overwhelming, can at long last destroy a people if it does not first win the victory of the Spirit against them. Jesus saw this with almighty clarity. Again and again, he came back to the inner life of the individual. With increasing insight and startling accuracy, he placed his finger on the inward center as the crucial arena where the issues would determine the destiny of his people. So, I wanted to choose that particular excerpt not only because it is one of my all time favorite texts that I've read, um, but because we are living in times when the world moves so fast, and that's not just for me or you. That's for so many people, and there's technology to keep people very informed through whatever lenses that may be, social media platforms, etc. And sometimes we forget that even simple moments such as reading a new book or listening to a new podcast, watching a new type of sporting event, maybe that you've never been to, or seeing a new type of concert or genre of music you've never listened to, right? Trying a new food you've never had. All these different things that we can all make the choice to engage in. We've probably had experiences where we go, "Ooh, I don't like how I feel right now," or, "Oh, I'm in this room. Do I stick out like a sore thumb?" Or, "Ooh, this makes me uncomfortable. I don't know the language that's being spoken." Right? So we have these little things that creep up, and I really don't have any academic or formal language to describe that feeling. That feeling when you feel like a little nervous, maybe a little anxious, like, "Oh, oh, this is new, this is different." That's actually a normal neurological function. And what's happening is truly in your brain, when we put ourselves out of our comfort zone, we open up new neural pathways. We create new neural pathways of new meaning and new understanding and broadening our awareness by the sheer fact of engaging our nervous system in something different and then processing it through the heart and mind. So when you hear this talk of, even we examine someone like Jesus, who's such a known figure in our world, and or we examine the life of Buddha or Muhammad or these other great teachers and leaders, however you view the Christ and the character of Christ or the person that was Jesus, even if you don't believe, there are a lot of incredible leaders in our world, incredible teachers. But the pointed thing that I kept going back to in this text was just the whole the whole concept of the inner life of the individual, the inward center. No one can do that work for you. Your anger, your pain, your grief, your unhealed trauma, your wounds from childhood, your heartbreak, your heartache. No one can heal those things for you. Your bias, your prejudice. We all have these things. We all have experiences that have rattled us to our core. So, as humans, the one thing I do know is exactly what Dr. Howard Thurman was talking about when he was processing the personhood of Jesus, the character of the Christ. And I want to read it one more time just to let it sit in with you as we close out this very quick episode of, is it really my responsibility to become more self aware? This is the quote. He recognized fully that out of the heart are the issues of life, and that no external force, however great and overwhelming, can at long last destroy a people if it does not first win the victory of the Spirit Again and again, Jesus came back to the inner life of the individual, and with increasing insight and startling accuracy, he placed his finger on the inward center as the crucial arena where the issues would determine the destiny of his people. And I want to give you this message today because as we approach, this is, going live here in October, and as we approach election season, and we have not just in the United States, but all over the planet, there's unrest and fighting, and there has been throughout the ages. There has been throughout centuries and centuries of this world. But at the end of the day, you look in the mirror at one person, and that's you. I look in the mirror at one person. That's me. The one thing that we must take ownership for in responsibility is our own awareness of who we are. Self-awareness, awareness of yourself. So I will leave you with that because I'm always going to be pondering questions. It is what I do. And I'm going to ask you the same questions. Thank you for getting compassionately curious with me in this episode, and take care. Thank you so much for showing up for yourself today and tuning in to this episode of the Cultural Capacity Podcast. We're glad you're here. If you found value in this episode, be sure to share out with your social networks. Hit the subscribe button and leave us a review on Apple. You know, all the things. Finally, don't forget to take advantage of our free quarterly subscription that is in our podcast description. The link is right there. It's called Better Community, and we would love to have you join us there too. Until next time, take care.